Neighbours are so damn noisy here, honestly.
Really? I've got 2 dogs, so hopefully nothing making them kick off.
No, don't get me wrong. I mean, my neighbours are great round here. Like I used to invite shitty neighbours. I used to fight with my neighbours because of them playing music all night and crap like that. Now it's just everyone around here likes to do the gardens and stuff, and the barbecues are off and everything now. So everyone, you start hearing everything, and it sets my dogs off. So, right. Is the chat announcing? Yeah, it's taking its time. The chat's taking its time starting up now. But if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching this back on YouTube, it should appear in a minute. It says it's got the link from all of them.
I can see it on YouTube.
Yeah, can you see it now?
Someone abusing me already in there, yeah.
Good stuff, good stuff. So it should appear on my phone in a minute, I think, so.
Yeah.
Just wait for that to appear. As soon as I know it's appeared on YouTube, then I go on Facebook and start yakking. 30 seconds to go, it says. There we go. The chats took quite a while to initialise there, so I know that the chats of the internet's a bit slow tonight. Woody's just typed nothing by the look of that. If you're there, Woody, give me a shout, mate. Oi, oi, there we go, that's better. Yeah, it looks like I say, a little bit of a lag, it seems, tonight. Hopefully it won't cut off. Woody says, loving the Amiga top.
It was this or the Commodore 64 one.
It was one or the other.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, sorry guys, I'm tuning Ice Cube. Right, yeah, it looks like we're now live on Facebook, so I think we can go ahead and start up with this. I should have concealed that to start with, but anyway, off we go. Hi, how you doing, guys? Hope you're all well. We're here on this beautiful Friday here at the back end of May, with things starting to go back to a bit more towards normal as of Monday, according to old Bojo. So we'll see how that pans out. But it's now 29th of May, and we're now trying to come out the other side of this lockdown, and hopefully nobody else will catch it with these restrictions they're lifting. We'll see what happens. But I'm here today, and this is now Retrogaming Room 101. Episode 6, I believe. I think this is now. I'm starting to lose count already, and we're only a few episodes in. But we've covered a lot of topics already. I think we're shooting about 75% from the field here. We've got, about 3/4 of the things have gone into Room 101, and we're looking for more and more topics every day. We've got 2 more lined up ready for next week. And if anybody out there who's watching does want to come on this, you got an idea for something you want to talk about, or if you want to discuss some of the topics that I've got to talk about, then drop me a message and I'll get you on in a week or 2. But there's a few people joining the chat now. We've got Woody, we've got Mike Lees, Simon Butler, Adi Killings. How's it going, guys? Hope you're having a good day. So today, guys, we've got our friend here, Jamie Wilson. Say hi, Jamie.
Hello.
And for those guys out there who don't know Jamie, unlikely any of you do, to be honest, because he's not part of our normal circle. Jamie is acquainted with a certain other YamYam from my crew through a very different topic completely. So tell us about yourself, Jamie.
So I've got a link to Aaron, and I was in a band with him for 5 years, and got very acquainted with him, and we started talking. I think one day I turned up at a gig and I had Retrogamer magazine with me, and he's like, "Oh, what you got there?" I was like, "Well, I like a bit of gaming, like a bit of the old stuff," and from there we sort of hit it off. But about me in general, I'm 44. I'm what you'd call a casual gamer these days. Been into games since I was very young. I got a Commodore 60. Very lucky to get a Commodore 64. I think it was Christmas '86, if I remember rightly. And I've loved gaming ever since. Really into it in my younger years, making sure I was trying to keep up to date with buying and selling all the time. Could never afford to have more than one thing at once, but went from C64, went to consoles, and then to the Amigas, and then to PC, and then getting all different things. I think I've owned most consoles over the years, and then basically predominantly gaming on PC, and then get married and have kids and things like that, and your spare time disappears. And then when I found out a bit of disposable income, I started finding this place called eBay. I could suddenly buy all the consoles I used to have when I was younger and couldn't afford to have.
You know what? eBay's a great place. I mean, eBay's one. I think it's one of the first places that kind of made people realise how easy it was to get hold of all that old crap you chucked away or you sold on over the years, and you kind of just didn't think too much of, or to get rid of some of your own shit. To be quite honest, I think I first discovered eBay about 2002. I think it was. I first discovered eBay, and I've had my account ever since then.
Yeah, I was just before that, and the reason I discovered eBay, I was very active on the forums back then, especially the Amiga forums, and into the emulation and stuff like that. And obviously it wasn't as great back then, but I was talking to people buy and sell and whatever, and we're trying to find someone had a really good deal on something. They were up country. I wasn't sure about them posting it, sending them payment, and someone said, well, why don't you go on eBay, because you can pay securely and it's posted and tracked and you got all this come back. And that was where it all started again from me, and picked up the Amiga 1200, which you can see behind me. And then it just got all out of hand. And
would you say that, like, going through the years, you were more of a microcomputer guy than a console guy?
Not necessarily. I had the C64 for a good few years. Absolutely loved it. And some of even my most favourite games now are from that era. Not sure if it's because I was young and more impressionable then, or I had so much time to play them and it created some good memories for me. But I had the C64 for a long time. I think it was till I saw Super Mario 2 on the NES back then. And something so I needed one of them and needed a different challenge. I think the C64, I think the games were sort of dying out. I think this must have been 91, I think.
Yeah, sounds about right. Yeah,
about 91. The games were dying out on the C64, and I wanted a bit more of a challenge, and chopped into C64 through the postcard and the news agents, as you did back in those days, and got myself a NES, and that was when it came with Super Mario and Duck Hunt and the gun.
You know what? You did quite lucky there, because I know I lusted after the NES. I used to play. I first played Super Mario Brothers in the arcade. And I found it in an arcade on holiday, but I didn't see that many places. And I remember coming home after that summer, and it was in the Argos and the Index autumn winter catalogue for that Christmas, and there was just a little shot of a NES. You had all the microcomputers still up, and there was a little shot in the corner of the NES with Super Mario Brothers on the screen. And I was like, oh man, I've got to have that. So I did beg for it. I didn't get it till the Turtles pack came around, but I did beg for that for a couple of years. And it wasn't until later I discovered that the NES wasn't really that popular, because a couple of the kids I went to a pretty poor school from a pretty poor area, and but quite a few of the kids in our school had a NES. Not that many had math systems. But to be honest, I think that was because the ones who were into the games had the NES, and then everybody else just kind of were a bit late to catch on. Everyone was kind of got into the computers more when they jumped straight from their 8-bit micros up to the 16-bit, computers and consoles and things like that. So I can understand that. Right. Az has joined us now, in case you were wondering, Jay. He's just said eBay will send him to a pauper's grave. So he'll scroll up on the chat in a minute. And Woody asked what your username was on the Amiga forums, out of interest. Can you remember?
I can't. It'll have Wilbo in it somewhere.
Wilbo in there somewhere.
Remember? Yeah, it'll be Wilbo.
He'll be going back and scouring it now, because Woody's a big Amiga guy out there. So
right, I love the Amigas. But yeah, I had the NES. And as they got Super Mario and that, and then Mario 2, Mario 3 come out, which was amazing. But then sort of realised that some of my favourite games on the C64 were the $1.99 and $2.99 pocket money games.
Yeah.
And you just used to go down the local news agents and buy these random games, and say some of the favourite games I play now on the C64, like Street Surfer, Ninja, and some games are still completely impossible. I still can't get past level 2 now, but I'll still put them on and try and go. They're all ones that I remember. So having the NES was okay, but some of these games are well expensive, and eBay didn't exist then. Second-hand games weren't as easy to come.
No.
But then for some reason, as soon as the SNES was announced, I decided to sell the NES and buy the SNES. And I had one of the first ones that came into the Portsmouth area then. Again, that came with the Super Mario World, as it was back then.
Yeah.
I remember playing that, trying to unlock all the stars. I remember, I can't remember if we phoned the Nintendo helpline or not, because we couldn't find that. I think it was 96 stars, wasn't it, on the SNES? And there was one that we couldn't
expensive.
find.
I know that much. We found it from my mate's house a couple of times, and his mum was raging at the phone bill after we did it. We only made one call, and they used to put you through this whole rigmarole. When you first phoned up, you'd be waiting about 5 minutes just to talk to someone. They knew how to charge up the ass for it, and the tips were crap. You could get better tips out of the magazines at the time, to be quite honest.
There was one level I was stuck at. I had 95 stars, and I remember to get the 96 star. What we had to do was you had to go to the end of the level, miss the gate, jump off of Yoshi's back underneath the gate.
That's right.
And then proceed on to that was where the 96 star one. That's the one we never figured out. We found that out. One of the daily newspapers from back then had gaming tips once a week in there. So that was it. But once I completed Mario, because I bought the SNES so early, the only other 2 games out was Super Tennis and Super Soccer.
Yeah, and the very early release ones. Yeah,
I chose Super Soccer, which was, to be honest, was the wrong one.
It's not a terrible game. It's not awful.
No, it's not terrible, but I still play Super Tennis now. It's one of my favourite tennis games. That is a great game. So got bored of the SNES very quickly, chopped that in, bought a Mega Drive. I don't know why. I'm going to upset Az now. I've never been a fan of Sonic.
That's fighting talk where we come from.
It's fighting talk, yeah. To see him next. But no, I'm a Mario man through and through, to be honest. But I had the Mega Drive for a while. And then I must have had a summer job, managed to get some money together. So I chopped in a Mega Drive and got myself an Amiga 600 when they came out.
That'll be the one that really broke the bank then, because Amigas aren't cheap, you know. Well, they weren't cheap. The 600 was like the budget re-release of the 500, wasn't it, with a few things cut out of it?
It was the cut-down one, but it still wasn't cheap. I think they were still 300 quid.
It's not cheap, but I mean, compared to buying the original Amiga packs, which were, you know, could have been 400 or 500 upwards, you know what I mean? I can imagine the 600 was a breath of fresh air, being able to come in at 300 quid.
Yeah, and it was smaller.
Way more compact.
And I think I could say I could do college work on it as well, so I might have got a bit of assistance with it back then. But yeah, totally different era of gaming for me then, and some great titles. Again, I still play a lot of Amiga games now. Definitely my most favourite machine, and had the 600. Then managed to go up to the 1200. Then bought the CD32. I had one of the CD32s for a while. Man. Bought that quickly, came with the 2 release games that weren't very good. God awful controller, S-video out only, so you couldn't even get RGB out the back of it. And then I think then I moved on to PC gaming. So it's probably around the time.
So you were walking into elitist territory at that point, I tell you.
Yeah. That was. I remember 486 DX2 66. I think it had 4 mega RAM. That was. I'd worked whole summer to save up for that one.
So I guess you were rocking things like Doom and that back in them days, weren't you?
That was when Doom 2 had just come out.
Doom 2, brilliant game.
I had the extra money to get Doom 2, so was well happy with that. And then stayed on the PC for a while. Dipped into the 3DO when that came out.
Okay.
Fell in love with that. Absolutely loved it. I remember Road Rash, Need for Speed, Return Fire. The amount of my life was spent playing 2-player Return Fire.
There are some really good games on the 3DO. I think it's one of those underappreciated consoles. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it was never going to compete with the NES and the SNES and the Mega Drive purely because of the time frame it was released in. And the relative, I mean, the 3DO was stupidly expensive for the time, but it was massively more powerful. And unlike the CDI, which come out in the same time frame, at least the 3DO they did try and design it to play games, not just be a multimedia device. And there were some really good games on there. I mean, the port of Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo on there is one of the best ones out there. There's actually 2 Road Rash games, if I'm not mistaken, on there. The one is, I think one is like a kind of remake of the Mega Drive original, and then they also did like a later one as well, if I'm not mistaken, which was based on, I can't remember which, but I know the one most people are familiar with, the one that was like a remake of the Mega Drive original. They also released it on PlayStation, a couple of others at the time. Those are 2 of the best games on there for sure. There's a lot more, but yeah, those are fantastic games. And I know I've probably just pissed off Simon Butler there, because I mentioned Street Fighter 2 about 10 minutes into this, and he's cursing the fact I always mention that game. But anyway, I think that brings us on nicely to, I mean, people can hear there that you've obviously got a fair bit of gaming history. You've owned a fair few things. You've been through the computers and some of the consoles that a lot of people out there might not have been as familiar with or had access to back in the day. So I think that brings us on nicely to your topic of discussion for today. If I just uncover the static, I did unveil it unfortunately for a minute or two at the start, but it's this, and it's inconvenient gaming. And I'm pretty sure a few people can relate to this, but this is in contrast to what a lot of people talk about. So tell us your thoughts on this, Jamie.
Well, everything I've just listed, I had all of that gear, spent all that money because I love playing the games. The hardware that it came on just happened to be the vehicle for me to play the games. Now, these days, a lot of life is busy, a lot of wife, kids, job, all that kind of stuff takes a time. If I want to play a game these days, I want to switch on something quickly. I want to be able to play that game and then put it down. I want it to work. I want to do it with a nice controller on a nice screen and whatever. So when Az said to me the other day about thinking about things for Room Redo 1, I actually thought, yeah, I'd actually chuck all my old consoles and my old hardware in there. A lot of people aren't going to like that. I know that. It's not the real way of playing games, how they were supposed to be played. But my old beauty behind me, the Amiga's been recapped. The monitor's been recapped. It's had a special switch put in it. Why? It looks lovely. The only reason it's sit there is because it looks lovely. But why would I sit and play a game on a 14-inch screen with a really low refresh rate that gives me a headache after a while, when I can switch on a Raspberry Pi, kick back in my comfy chair, and play it through HDMI on a 40-inch screen? So yeah, I'd actually ditch all my old hardware and go pure emulation.
Well, it's interesting that you kind of it's interesting that you go from that angle. I mean, obviously you're going to upset some serious purists out there when it comes to that. I mean, I have my own issue when it comes to purists, because I love my old stuff, but I do kind of hear what you're saying. It's in stark contrast to what a lot of people out there will often talk about. One of the big conversations you'll see people argue fiercely about online, or when you meet people at events and that, is people will incessantly hate on emulation, and especially, I mean, I'm a big arcade guy, I mentioned this before. People incessantly hate on people who put PCs into arcade machines, or they will not use original arcade monitors, or if they do use a PC or something, that you're then not emulating the scan lines. You know, you can get scan line generators. It's like people seem to forget that a lot of these problems here were byproducts of them just trying to get around what technology was available at the time. They weren't intentionally put there for aesthetics. They were just trying to work around the fact that scan lines were unavoidable. They were working around the fact that games were quite pixelated and they needed to break them up to soften the image and things like that. And that was what they did to break that up. Now, I know what you're saying, because when it comes to modern gaming and stuff, well, modern retro gaming, should I say, you've got a lot more choices out there. I can understand that. Do you not think, though, that part of the love of, I mean, obviously playing devil's advocate here, part of the love for playing the old games is entirely in the quirks and the shortcomings of these old consoles?
Possibly. Yeah, I can see why, and obviously that I've picked a subject which I know will get a reaction. I don't want to come on and do something boring. But yes, I can see that from my own experience. Let's say I used to have all the stuff I bought up off eBay over the years used to be all set out on racks and set nice to the telly, and I could put nice pictures of it up on Twitter and whatever. But if I think, right, I'm going to play so-and-so on the NES today, I'd get out the cartridge, put the cartridge in, switch it on, green screen, blue screen, whatever, get the cartridge out, get the contact cleaner, get the toothbrush, clean it up, and then have to put it in through the RF the lead, and it's just hassle. If I've got a Pi or some form of emulation, I could have spent 10 minutes playing that game. That's the same with the CD32. I mean, I've still got, apart from the stuff I've sold to Az, which I don't know if you've heard about over the years, I've still got all this old kit. It's all out in the loft, along with lots of CRT TVs and monitors, and my phone will buzz if someone lists a certain type of CRT monitor on eBay that goes to the Commodore 64, and I'm quite likely to buy it for some ridiculous price, even though I'm not going to use it. And this is what I hate about this as well. You're sort of trapped in this must-have. But yeah, I can see why people like playing games like that. I think I'm just old and grumpy and past it, to be honest. I
No,
just
I
want to
don't
play
think
the
it's
game.
necessarily that. I mean, it's a polarising opinion. One of the
Yeah.
chats we had the other day was over. It was through Pete Armour, and he mentioned the subject of gatekeeping. And this is people who like to tell others how they should and how they shouldn't game. Well, to be honest, how anybody tells others how they should and shouldn't enjoy what they, a shared hobby or something like that. And it's a bit unfair when people come in and say, well, no, you shouldn't enjoy it that way. People may not be as in depth as people like myself. It's easy for me to see both sides because, excuse me, because obviously I do events and things like that. So we get everything from the hardcore tech heads right down to casual gamers and to people who've never even experienced these things before. And the most common thing you're going to see when these people walk in, 9 times out of 10, is they're going to want to come in and they're going to want to sit down and play those games. The important thing we do at the event is make sure they play those games. Now, for as many people as are coming in who play those games, as an equal amount who will come in and they might not play anything at all, but they will walk round and they will take their pictures and they will stand and discuss with people the caveats of playing on these systems and all the hindrances you have to put up with. I mean, a classic is tape loading. I mean, everybody seems to have an anecdote about it. I don't think it was ever as bad as people talk about. I'd never actually owned. I mean, confession here, I never actually owned any of the disc-based systems. Back in the day, I borrowed a couple and I own some now, but I never owned an ST, I never owned a Spectrum Plus 3, I'm going back a bit further, and I never owned an Amiga up until I was a lot older. So I don't really know what that experience was like. I mean, does any of that disc loading hold favour with you? I mean, there's got to be something in it because you've got your Amiga set up right there behind you, so there's got to be something in the originality that does kind of I don't know, light a match for you.
Well, just going back to tape loading a minute. I mean, I remember when I was younger, I had some games on tape that would only load if the tape deck was upside down on the Commodore 64. there was games that we used to what is it? Shift run stop, want it to load on the C64 right. From tape, yeah. Press play on tape. We used to press play on tape and go downstairs because I didn't want to disturb anything in the room until I heard the music playing from the game. So
it's almost like a superstition in it. I know when
it is. Yeah.
If you talk to any Spectrum owner, and there was definitely a thing about it because obviously the Spectrum didn't have a dedicated cassette recorder and it was all analog. So you were depending on whatever the quality was of the tape deck that you were using to load your games. And 9 times out of 10, it was when you bought something out of, it'd be like whatever the cheapest tape deck was in Argos that season. If yours was broke, or if you jumped along to Tandy or something like that, you'd pick up whatever cheap piece of shit you could find that actually had the cables you needed to do it. And with a Spectrum, with it being all analog, you had to mess around. You couldn't even nullify the sound because you had to have the actual physical audio outputting. And the sound came through the Spectrum's inbuilt speaker. Yeah, so you had to mess around. You always had the volume. There was always a volume and a tone control. Sometimes you would have a treble and a bass control, but 9 times out of 10 it would just be volume and what did I just say? Tone. Yeah. Which is, I think, is some kind of weird combination between the two. And if you didn't have those settings exactly right, especially because most of us are running like 10th generation cassette copies that have been duplicated through an inch of their life. If you and I remember I had markers on mine which would actually show those individual settings I needed depending on what game I was loading. I had different settings for my favourite different games. I'd have to write it on the tape decks, I'd write it on the cover. And sometimes it wouldn't even load then, and it was always a pain. So I understand what was it like when it came to discs? I hear some terror stories with them, but I mean, did you ever encounter that level of problems with them? Was it particularly slow loading for you? Did you notice it?
No, the disc was fine. I never had a disc drive for my C64. I had a mate that did, and he was just the king back in those days. We'll go around his house and watch it load. And I'm just like, sorry, the chat's catching up, saying about Duncan Woodford. Is that Woody? I assume.
Yeah, Woody.
Love the sound of floppy disk loading. Yeah, I mean, I love that on the Amiga. Mine's got an SD card in it now. Loading times again. Why am I going to sit and wait? But yeah, that loading time, the the tone does bring back memories. But yeah, moving from tape to disc was just another world. It was amazing, and I remember I think it was a Spectrum emulator on the original Xbox. When you loaded a tape image or whatever, it would actually load in real time. So you'd sit there for 5 to 10 minutes while the noise sort of rattled on.
Yeah, sorry. I was just checking there. Sorry.
Sorry. So my YouTube's gone slow.
No. You're not the only one. I noticed at the very start of this stream. Sorry, guys. There's a little bit of a lag. Just to let you know, from next week, I'm probably going to be moving the Friday stream to a Thursday because the last couple of Fridays we've had a few frame drops and a few lags on a Friday night. So I'm probably going to be switching this to a Thursday from this point onwards. So yeah, the chat thread's just a little bit slow. I was a bit concerned then because there'd been no chat for a little while. But I saw it on my phone, so I knew it was still the stream was still running at least. But yeah, I know what you're saying. But did you notice more about the disc loading issue once you started to get consoles around that time? I mean, did it become more apparent then?
Not really, no. Unless, I mean, going back to the Amiga, unless you're playing Secret of Monkey Island 2 on 11 discs and disc swapping and stuff like that. And again, you get all the way through the game and disc 7 wouldn't work. Odd things like that. No, one thing that the loading time, once we'd reached disc, loading time wasn't a big thing for me because it made a lovely noise and most of the time it worked on the Amiga anyway. I
suppose at least it was an audio cue that it was working because you would hear that disc, that drive grinding away, wouldn't you?
The lovely whir and click every now and then. Yeah, you know what was going on. Whereas tape, you just sit and wait. And sometimes, I remember on a C64, you used to get to the loading screen, fantastic lines, and the lines down the side would stop. And you'd wait, you'd think it's going to be all right, and then the tape would just stop. And it's like, I'll give that another go then. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's the thing is though, a lot of those things are the kind of things that I think people they do view through rose-tinted glasses. You know, they discuss how much they love these quirks. I mean, how much do people really enjoy putting up with those things? I mean, it's such a marmite, such a divisive. It's a polarising topic because I think there's a lot of people out there who would swear so heavily against doing anything but original, and this is where the gatekeeping comes into it. It's not up to people to tell other people how they should and shouldn't enjoy their hobby, but at the same time, it's like you've got to be able to see the argument for it. I mean, surely, if for example, if someone handed you, for example, a Game Boy, there's a lot of these Game Boy mods going around now. And someone handed you a Game Boy, right? Now, the old black and white screen, well, the green screen, pixelized screen, it never really bothered us back in the day. You had to be in, like, pure daylight in order to get the best from it. But there's something very strange about playing Game Boy games now in, like, super high-res colour and things like that. I mean, there's got to be an element of trying to retain those super unique quirks. I mean, okay, tape loading is something we could all probably do without. We are impatient these days. You know, we become that kind of instant gratification society where you get what you want immediately, and we don't have to wait for anything. You can order food to your door any time of the night. You know, you can order anything from anywhere around the world. You know, you can talk to people in other countries. You know, no problem at all. And yet, like, people hanker, I think, for these simpler things. Like I say, the delay in loading times and things like that, I think everyone's glad to see the back of. But like I say, don't you think there's a place for those very unique quirks? I mean, for example, I'm thinking of probably a bad example, really, but when it comes to things like, say, the Game Boy, have you ever played on a Virtual Boy, for example?
I don't think I have, actually, no.
Well,
I know what it is, and yeah.
Yeah, well, the thing is with that, because you've got like this, it uses two, obviously very unique, they're like spinning lenses inside, and it creates this pseudo 3D effect. And even though the red screen thing can kind of give you a headache, and the neck position is ideal, if you've ever tried playing that on emulation, you really lose a massive amount of what it was. I mean, if you were to... You know, if you were to try and play that on like a normal screen, it wouldn't even be the same game because you wouldn't get that illusion of depth. You wouldn't get that same experience. I mean, would you advocate trying to replicate those experiences in emulation?
I don't know. Well, it brings me on to a good subject. So we talked about loading times. The next thing I had written down, which I just put down on a bit of paper, was displays. So yeah, if it gives you a unique thing that can't be emulated, and obviously the two screens, and if there's a game that you love so much on that platform, then I understand that. Luckily, I've never tried one, so I don't know if there is a game I would love so much on that platform. All the games that I like seem to emulate okay, but there's obviously such a big thing these days about, well, it has to be played on a CRT. I think I've got 4 around the house.
Yeah.
My kids, for some reason, my kids can hear them when they're switched on. My younger kids, because I don't know if the caps are going in.
No, I've heard about that. Apparently, there's something about. We might not have noticed it back in the day, but it's something to do with as you get older, you can't hear the same frequencies anymore. And with you being in the band and that, you definitely have had your eardrums smashed a few times, I would imagine, over the years. So you can obviously guess that there's going to be problems there. But it's to do with the younger people have a broader range of hearing, and CRTs. I mean, you can hear it. You hear it most of all if you ever stand next to an arcade machine in a quiet room, which you don't very often. When you're a private owner, you very much hear that, like a high-pitched frequency whine coming from it. I think it's inherent to the technology. And your kids will definitely hear it, because an LCD is generally silent, you know.
Yeah, so that's it. I mean, well, it must be played on a CRT for the right experience. But good luck if you've got one that works. If you've got the space for one these days, everyone forgets how big they is. I did again another amazing eBay purchase I made. I saw some 36-inch Panasonic, amazing thing which I went and picked up, and it was as deep as it was wide. Obviously, I'd just forgotten how big they were in those days, and it was a 2-man lift as well. Playing Mario Kart on that, well, it reminded me a bit more of the old days, but it wasn't that much different that it ruined the game for me. And so I know you can get flat screens, and you can get these line doublers and these scan converters and all these other things that help out. But I mean, if you're that much into it and that's your thing, then great. But not for me. Not for me. Look, I just want to go. I want to sit in front of a big screen. I could sit in front of that screen and play a game. Within half hour, I've got a headache. Why am I concentrating on a 14-inch screen when I can play it on something that's a 40 inches? It's just as nice. The aspect ratio is right. You can put filters on, loads of different filters. You can put the bezels on. You can put the scan lines in.
I hear you.
Yeah. So yeah. Again, displays. If you're that hardcore into it and that's the only way you can play and enjoy that game, and that's for you, then I understand that, but not for me.
No, I mean, I totally understand it. What makes this such a hard topic to decide on is because just by looking at it as a phrase there, the way I've put it up, we've got inconvenient gaming, right? I'm fully on board with everything you're saying. Like, I build arcade machines, or I have built arcade machines in the past. I still do little projects. When I game at home, I'd be lying if I said I did much more than generally emulating the games that I want to play. I'm all about playing my systems. Something I talked about in my thing the other day was that in episode 5 was the fact that when it comes to, you know, people telling you the way you should and shouldn't game, you've got to work with what works for you. Not everybody has got the capability and the space to put all this kind of stuff out. We would love to. I mean, in an ideal world, I'd have an entire room dedicated to all this, but I just haven't got the space, the truth be told. I mean, the amount of gear that I own, it fills a workshop, and that's boxed up and out the way for 6 months of the year, and I love having my things on display. It's partly why I buy consoles and things like that I can put out to play, because it's great to have them and it's great to look at them, sure, but I don't believe in them just being bought to collect on a shelf, especially when you haven't got the room. And then when you've then got to break them down and put them out to play, and then pack them away and put them away again to put back on display, that's got to be a massive pain. I see a lot of YouTubers out there. There's a bit of a split in YouTubers. You've got the ones who do nothing but talk about it and talk about the histories and that, and then you've got the other people who they talk about their collecting and that they're very pure about, you know, absolutely having to have the original game, the original hardware and things like that. And yet when you actually look closely at what they actually do and ask them in reality, they actually say, well, I don't get to play most of this stuff. I do still play on my emulators and things like that. People who are watching Just, by the way, I'm sorry about that. This is the reason that I'm now going to switch to doing a Thursday evening instead of a Friday evening, especially during, it shouldn't matter normally, but it seems that during lockdown, we've got some serious problems with the ISPs throttling our internet supply, and YouTube seems to be the biggest culprit at the moment. Whenever a YouTube stream melts down, it melts down my entire connection and everything, so really sorry about that, guys. When you're watching this back, I'm going to splice it together and I'm going to re-upload it, so don't worry too much about that. And I'll do it immediately after that. Andy Johnson says, Woody did he? Yeah, it is Virgin Media, Woody, yeah. I've got to be honest, like, the best of a bad bunch, they're all shit, let's face it. Right, so anyway, guys, sorry to kind of kill the flow there. I hate it when that happens because it ruins your flow a bit, but right, as to where we're going with it anyway. Yeah, I was talking about the problems we have with with convenience. I certainly at home, I will tend to go for, using whatever I've got to hand at home. I won't break out my original systems. I'll tend to go for emulation. I haven't got time to be messing about with setting everything up. When I've got time to game, I might find an hour within my day, and when I do, I just want to be able to get in and go straight to my gaming. You know what I mean? But I will admit that a big part of what I enjoy about retro gaming is thinking about those quirks. But thinking about it's probably better than experiencing them in some cases. And you were going to talk about something, weren't you, Jamie?
Well, yeah, it was just that we were talking about people buying stuff up and not playing it, and there seems to be a lot of displaying of all this gear, but not actually using it. And I think the last thing I wanted to talk about was the price of some of this stuff these days. It's going for silly amounts of money. The last things that I sold, I made a decision to sell them because I could either emulate them perfectly or I didn't play them, and I sold my 3DO for a very good price to Az, by the way, and I sold my Atari Jaguar with some games and some controllers. And the moment I sold them, I regretted it. This is the one thing I hate about retro gaming and collecting. I was like, yeah, I don't play them anymore. I can emulate them perfectly. I sell them. As soon as I posted them off, like, what have I done? But these things are just going up and up in price, and I don't think they're worth the money that they're going for these days. The 14-inch monitors that are used on the C64s and the Amigas, people are wanting, they're going for like 150 quid a time. Some of them are going up to 200, 250 a time. It's like, it's silly money. Is this just the market? Is there less of them around, or is it because demand's got so high because they're great things for people to show, things to put on YouTube, things to post to your Instagram and whatever? Is that falsely driving up the price of the market? And for those that really want to play the games on the real equipment, is that pricing them out of the market as well? I don't know. Has it become almost like a fashion item? Is it fashionable to be in retro? I mean,
yeah,
I've got my Amiga t-shirt, I've got my C64 t-shirt, which I remember going in like Primark or whatever, they had Commodore 64 and Spectrum t-shirts. It's like retro has become fashion. Yeah.
There's definitely something to be said for that.
Yeah.
I suppose when it comes to the whole collecting side of things, though, it'd be like, it doesn't matter what you're collecting. It doesn't matter if you collected old books, you collect vinyl. I see behind you there, you've got a couple of guitars up on the wall and things like that. I'm sure you've got an extensive music collection. Something's only, it's like the old saying is, something's only worth what someone is willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
And as long as people are paying those prices and willing to pay those prices, that will be what determines something's true value. They say that scarcity is not necessarily an indication of value. When it comes to when the arcade community, that is true. There are some very rare arcade machines that people don't actually give a shit about in the slightest. But you're right there, mate.
Sorry, mate.
You're reading the content. I'm
trying to read Az's comment.
I'm gonna go over all that in a sec, so don't worry about that. So when it comes to collecting arcades, rarity doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be high value. It's becoming more true as time goes on, because there's less and less original boards working. Some boards are actually suiciding on us. That's one of the terms you'll find in arcade collecting. When it comes to consoles, though, at the moment it is very much a collector's market, and so anybody who's buying and selling, if something is rare, it doesn't even matter how shit it is or how indifferent it is compared to, say, a standard a standard game. Like you might get like a certain or regional variation of a game, and you can buy the British one and play that just fine, or you get one that's got a special label on or something. Just because it's got that, it's forcing the price up, and because collectors are paying it and are still seeking them out, they are maintaining that value. And when you look at the cost of a lot of it, I think it balances out in a way, because unlike the cost of a lot of things, you get this kind of curve. If you've ever seen the curve of collecting, and it works something like this, it's like when something's brand new, it costs up here. When it starts to become old, the price drops. When it goes out of fashion, it's its lowest point down here. Then as people start to seek them back out and collect them, the price goes up. When everybody's doing it, the price peaks up here. And then at that point, people start to damage them. They start to get lost. You realise that the actual number that's back out there. And then the price it really does plateau then, because you realise what the value is. And there's people out there paying 200, 250 quid for certain games because they're rare. But then again, they might only be paying like £1 for the majority of the games that they collect. And when you think about how much those games were originally at like 40 and 50 quid a pop for console games, it sort of balances itself out, if you know what I mean. And I think the thrill of the hunt is something that people enjoy. I think that's the part of the fun of collecting anything that you do. You want to own that thing that you maybe never had, or you want in your collection because it's cool to show off to other enthusiasts or whatever. It's a difficult thing. Right, so let's refer back to, I know we lost a bit of the chat there, guys, but I did pay attention to what a lot of you were saying. I know Woody mentioned, he says he thinks there's definitely a place for both out there. I think people love to indulge every now and then, but as far as practicality goes, I think the majority of people out there do definitely do the most convenient gaming possible for them. And it makes sense to do in a modern age when you've got to pay your bills. You can only buy a certain size house, you know what I mean? So it's just the way it works. Just having a look on here. A few of the guys exchanging some comments there. Let's see. Right, so as says, are you throwing all of your hardware into Room 101 or just your personal collection? I think someone out there is looking to buy up everything you got left, mate. There.
Yeah, he's had half me loft as it is. Yeah.
What's he bought off you over the years then?
What did he have? I think the last lot was a NES and a load of games, 3DO and all the games. There was a lot of games for the 3DO. He took something else as well. I can't remember what it was. Some random games, and that was when I went through the stage of, do you know what? I'm not playing hardly any of this. I'll emulate it all. I'll have a good clear out and sent him a catalogue. And like I say, posted off a big box the next day. What have I done? Oh, all that stuff I never used.
I think that
just sit around gathering dust.
Yeah, I think seller's remorse is something that's very as real as buyer's remorse. Someone will kick themselves out how much they spent buying something, but then when you sell something, doesn't matter how much you made from it, you'll sit there and you'll be like, oh, I miss it now. It's a bit of a hoarder's trap, really, because when you hoard stuff, you're kind of keeping stuff that you don't touch most of the time, you don't use, and it's like, why am I hanging on to it? The second it's gone, you're going to miss it. It's a hoarder's trap, that is. Yeah. Woody says, in my opinion, none of it is worth the price it's selling for. It's all greedy arseholes taking advantage of people into the hobby. I don't know if I can fully get on board with that one, because the traders, they know what people are willing to pay. And it's like I say, if people are willing to pay and they're not crying when they're handing over their cash at an event, or they're not they're not insisting that you have security guards to handle the PayPal transaction, I think people are pretty comfortable with what they're spending. There was a guy on my wall actually yesterday. He bought John Ramiro's original Doom discs, the ones that he made for himself back in the day, and he continued to use whenever he developed on it for many years. And he paid, I think it was something like 1,300 quid for them, for this set of Doom. I know it seems insane by most people, but is it any difference to like sports memorabilia? You buy a signed football shirt with a whole a winning team on, you're going to pay through the nose for it. Those things go up at auctions for charity all the time. You buy signed footballs, you buy anything that was owned by somebody with a name. I mean, you could go to the really dark depths of that and say there's people out there probably selling the knickers and making money on it. If people are willing to pay for it, then they're going to make money on it. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure if you go to any convention, it's part. I think it's part of fan nature. You go to any Comic Con or anything like that, people will happily shell over 40, 50 quid just to get 2 seconds with somebody they saw on TV and grab a signature. Some of the major conventions, they're paying like £200 and £300 to get about 30 seconds of time with these people one-to-one. And it's like, the value stamp on something is always about what it means to an individual, not to a market. I think that's the way you got to look at it. And it's the rarity of these things. It's not necessarily rare to be in contact with somebody famous, but if somebody is really into that person, they'll keep blood out of a stone to get the money that they need, to find that money to indulge what they really love. So I can't say it's all about greed. It's definitely more about demand than it is about supply, I think. Andy Johnson says eBay is a scourge. The thing is with eBay, it's a love-hate thing for a lot of people. I've never been seriously ripped off on eBay, thankfully. And I'll be honest, I buy 90% of my stuff off eBay. I mean, I don't know where you get all your stuff from, Jay. I mean, do you still use eBay for? I mean, what do you generally use eBay for?
Yeah, anything these days. You can buy anything off there, can't you? I mean, new stuff, old stuff. I say I've always got save searches running, looking for that old Commodore monitor that I always wanted, and I still want for some insane reason, because it'll probably just sit in the loft, or rare things like that. But I'm quite happy using eBay, buying and selling. It's just I just think the price that some of the gear is going for these days is quite insane, especially for people just to put it on a shelf. If you're going to pay that amount of money for a monitor and then use it every day, fine, but don't just put it on a shelf and put pictures of it up on Instagram to look cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of money to spend just to get two seconds of cool points. I think that's more indicative of society we've become now, is that everybody's waiting for that latest self-aggrandization, that they need that approval from strangers. It's a little bit desperate, I suppose, but we all do it in certain points of our life. Mike Lee's mentioned about cave PCBs. Yeah, that's an arcade thing. The cave arcade shooters, they cost a fair bit of money, but they're not necessarily the best games out there. They are 10 a penny. Andy Johnson mentioned the price of Streets of Rage 3 there. eBay's to blame for most of it. How many listings do you see with that rare in the title? You know what? That is something. That is like an old seller's trick. You whack a load of asterisks on your title and put it all in capitals and
capital rare with asterisks.
Yeah, it's just like fucking flies to a zapper in. You know what I mean? In a meat shop, in a butcher's shop, it's that same thing. It's like something looks big and flashy, and you tell people that it's cool and they want it. They will buy it. And you know what? As much as most of us aren't guilty of, suckering into that, there's 10 for every one person who doesn't buy into that. There's 10 idiots out there who will every day they will sucker themselves into stuff. They'll walk down the street and see a sale sign in a shop window and believe that there's genuinely a sale going on. Most sales are absolute bullshit, and it's a high street trick, if anything. I mean, it's like when you talk about the January sales. Have you ever really bought anything in a January sale? Or it's like Black Friday. That's something that's penetrated. I don't know. In the last 2-3 years, it came out of nowhere, and I know it's an American thing. And because the American corporations are taking over the British companies, they're trying to kind of invoke this Black Friday thing. But the truth is, our economy won't support it, and we don't really get it. So, like, the wicked deals they get over there when they do it, where they say 90% off everything, they don't do it here. All they'll do is bang the price up for a few weeks before, and then they'll say, look, it's on sale now, and just knock a few quid off. It's horse shit, but it's like people are sheep, and people will follow it every time and get sucked into it. And if people want to pay those overinflated prices, if they've got it, that's their business, as far as I'm concerned.
Or have a punch up for last year's TV.
Oh yeah, the videos on YouTube of people crushing each other trying to get a deal on a fucking kettle or something. And I'll get a grip. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Andy Johnson says he wants to go to the USA and dig up a copy of E.T. will be worth a fortune. That's the story about all the ones being buried in the desert, in it, you know.
Yeah, but would he play it? That's the thing.
Yeah.
Play it, or is that to put on a shelf?
That's it. When you leave it on the shelf all dirty, yeah. That's.
Yeah.
Andy says, "I can see the title now. Super rare original game with original sand." Yeah, probably. Right. Just having a quick look down the list. Right, even my text thing is scrolling incredibly slowly right now, so I'm just trying to let it pan down. Fridays are definitely a bad day for this, guys. Going forward, I'm going to have to shift to a Thursday because this is the third time now this has happened, so I'm going to have to switch to a Thursday, I think. Woody's using an example against me there. He's actually said, like when I sold you my Beeb, traders aren't ripping people off like those on eBay. Woody did me a really good deal on his BBC Micro with a mod, which I still haven't actually got to set up. Woody, man, I really need to. Yeah, he does say he buys most of his stuff on eBay, but I'm selective of what I buy. Yeah, it's just smart shopping. It's like whenever you search for something, you want to buy something, you should automatically search for it, and then you click the little tab options at the top, and you should say sort by price plus postage, lowest first. And I only tend to search for buy it now stuff, to be quite honest, because I can't be asked waiting around for auctions these days. It's great if it's something that's of unknown value, but for most stuff you can just go with buy it now prices. No one wants to wait around for the end of an auction. I know that's how eBay originally was, but that's certainly not what it is now. Kind of going off track a bit here, guys, sorry about that.
So on eBay I always do an advanced search and look for completed and sold listings and see what it's gone for, and tell you what the market is going out at the minute. Yeah. That's
what you do. It's just a smart thing. Right, so inconvenient gaming. Right, as a topic, this is a hard one for me. Deciding whether to 101 it, it's difficult, see, because when it comes to what you're talking about in terms of being able to play games, I am totally with you, because I haven't got the time to break out my consoles at home. I love doing it at events. I love taking the time to do that. But I cry sometimes thinking about how much setup we actually do before an event and after, because before an event we can spend up to 2 days setting our kit up and testing it and going over it and making sure things are working that have been in a box for 6 months, and then saying, oh, I've forgot this bit of kit and I've got to find this cable, and oh, I've been through my loft every day for a week. And then you've got 48 hours, and at the end of an event, what happens? Within 2 hours everything's thrown into a box, straight back into a box, to leave you in the same situation in a couple of months' time when you're doing an event again. So I know exactly where you're coming from when it comes to convenience. And at home, I just don't indulge in it generally. If I have a new console, I buy a rare console. People will see that obviously I do my videos. I cover like rare consoles and things that I picked up and things like that. I will tend to buy them, play them a little bit there, break them out once in a while, and then 9 times out of 10 they only tend to get used for events. Once they eventually sort a room out, they will all go on permanent display. But that's not for everybody, and not everyone's got the room to do that. However, I've got to be honest, I am envious of the people who can do that, because if I could, I very much would. And as much as it's a pain in the arse, if I could set up a room in my house where I could set up a big rack of CRTs, I could set up all the original sticks in good condition, all the original joypads, all the original consoles, I think I would. I mean, I think I still would, and I think that's what the collectors are trying to do. Inconvenience is definitely a problem, and when it comes to like playing modern consoles, I think the one good side of the whole DLC structure, you know, the modern business model, is that you can sit on your sofa, you can just download your games, you haven't even got to get up. You haven't got wires to deal with anymore with your joypads. You can turn your console on without actually touching it. And you've got like super high crystal displays and stuff like that. And emulation, like you say, you've got a lot of access to, like, you know, wicked like filters, and you can make it look exactly how you want it to look. You don't have to strain your eyes anymore. You can play N64 without making your eyes fucking bleed. So, you know, I totally understand where the convenience is coming, where you're coming from with the conveniencing, and I'd be doing it. You know, I hate inconvenience. That's why I use EverDrives. That's why I don't use original cartridges. I'd rather have an EverDrive where I can just hit a reset command from my controller and switch games every 2 seconds. I don't be taking cartridges in and out and wearing them down and wrecking them. But when it comes to why we all love gaming, you're right. It is about the games and it is about playing them. But I think there's too much about nostalgia and wanting to recapture what you experienced first time round. And I think if you remove that element completely, I don't know how much some systems and some games would actually stand up. Because I think with some of it, like I say, we talked about the Game Boy, we talked about the Virtual Boy. The Vectrex is a pretty good example, because the Vectrex, there was nothing like it. And if you try and emulate a Vectrex now, the games seem very hollow. But when you're seeing that proper, that vector display with the phosphor glow and everything behind it, you definitely will be losing something. And even though it's not convenient and you're playing on a small screen, and I'm not a big fan of the Vectrex controller, there's something about that experience that I just couldn't replicate another way, and I think there's got to be a place for it. So I'm afraid when it comes to the topic of inconvenient gaming, it can't go in 101. It just can't. I think too many people would crucify me if I were to put inconvenient gaming to in 101. It's not something I'm a big fan of myself, and there's certainly a lot to be said for people who spend all their time doing it. But if I take a look at my friends list at any given time, if I look down my Facebook page, every day I see people on there who've got, especially someone like the tech heads, there's some guys out there, they're musicians like yourself, and they've got their setup in there. Every shot of them, they've got a studio, they've got their keyboards all set up, they've got MIDI mixers and stuff like that. They're hooked up to their C64 mixing SID chip music, you know what I mean? Yeah. And they're doing it on a daily basis. And like they said, there's no way of really replicating that. I suppose it boils down more to not just convenience, but how into what you're in is doing. It's like audio files, for example, wouldn't listen to that swear by vinyl music, even though technically it's a terrible quality sound. But it is a sound that it's typical of the media that it is, and it's what gives some of the styles of music their characteristics. Do you know what I mean? And I think if you were to throw vinyl in the bin, you'd have a million people punching you in the face.
We'll have a discussion. That one is.
Do you know what I mean?
Can of worms.
So I think it kind of, you've got to draw these comparisons. So I don't think I can readily put that one into room 101. So that one's been saved by the skin of its teeth. I'm gonna say right here, because I love to play my games, and I would happily do away with all that if there was a better way of doing things at home. I think this is why EverDrives and Flash solutions have become so popular in recent years, because people want that happy medium, and that's certainly where I come from. I like to be able to use original hardware because it's genuinely replicating the game in the way it should be. But at the same time, I haven't got to have an entire Billy bookcase from IKEA full of games stacked top to bottom if I'm using an EverDrive. And I can play games I can play hacks, I can play prototypes, I can play, rare games I'd never be able to afford. It's that happy medium for me. So I think there's definitely a place for both. So I don't think I can completely down to real one.
Yeah, and I completely. That's the answer I expected, to be honest. Yeah, I think the EverDrive is the middle ground and that type of technology. But just out of interest, so what do you play on a flat screen, or do you play on a CRT? And if you've got multiple consoles out, how would you go about it? Do you have SCART switches? What sort of technology do you use?
To be honest, the way I would do it, and I think from a lot of people's perspective, the whole subject of aspect ratios and pixel accuracy is one I know one of my other guests wants to address. So I'm not going to go into that one too much.
Yeah, that's
but, right. But as far as I'm concerned, for me, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. I don't go in for buying like the gold-plated RGB SCART cables and having the display mods and things like that. At the end of the day, back in the day, we used to play on shitty RF that would barely tune into a 12-inch bedroom TV that was like 10 years old. You know what I mean? It didn't. It really didn't matter. And to be honest, even now, my eyes aren't the best anyway, and I'd rather have a modern display if I can. So if I can plug it into my main TV, I'll do it. At an event, I'll throw it into an LCD. Some old consoles can look shit on an LCD, but to be honest, if you're enjoying, it's a well-designed game, you shouldn't really notice, because you shouldn't be able to pick up on whether it's, you know, you've got scan line accuracy, or you've got pixel point accuracy, or the colour depths are correct, or things like that. Because if the game's good, you're absorbed in the game and not in the aesthetics of it. And that's something that's definitely true with the arcade games. I prefer to play my arcade games these days. I love an original arcade machine, and it's the way to do it. But when it comes, I own arcade machines, and they are, in terms of collecting, they're the biggest pain in the arse of any system you'll ever own, because you've got so much to deal with. The costs are so expensive. The room you need is so expensive. And at the end of the day, arcade games, they're instant gratification. You want to be able to plug them in and play. And you can't really do that with arcade games anymore, because they take so much maintenance. I will more than happily plug in my emulation system at home and play that way any day of the week with modern controls, you know, highly serviced controls. So I just think that's a better way to go. So, alright. Okay, right, to the next subject anyway. Is our chat still working? Are we still online?
I think so. You went a bit funny then, but it seems alright at the minute.
Yeah, it does seem to drop out so often. I'll try and keep my subject brief. I'm just going to scroll down
That's fine.
the chat and get that back caught up. Right. Okay, so moving on to my topic then, guys. This is going to be my topic for today. I thought about this one because I actually had... I wanted to kind of pick something that I hadn't covered yet, and it was something we very briefly brought up in the chat the other day, so it kind of sparked my interest again, and it's this: messy gamers. Right now, I'm going to paint a picture for you now here, and that box kind of greatly describes it to me. Whenever I owned a console or a computer or anything back in the day, we didn't have the money to buy multiple systems. We certainly couldn't afford to have, like, at the very most, because I was really into my games, my parents conceded, and they would allow me to have a console, and they would allow me to have a handheld of some description. In the very early days, that meant we had our Spectrum in the house, and I would have those little, you know, those handheld LCD games, the little black and white crystal
Nintendo ones.
Yeah, superb, like the Game & Watches. And I was more than happy with that. And then obviously as time goes on, I had my NES. I wanted a Game Boy, but I ended up with a Game Gear, which I wasn't disappointed with, because the Game Gear is a cool little console. And then obviously as time moved on, you kind of then evolve and have whatever the latest thing is. I think I went up to a SNES, and then a couple of years later onto a PlayStation. Then I got a Game Boy Color when I could afford to buy my own. And, you know, so I went that way. But the thing that was always common is, in order to get my next console, I had my parents would force me to sell what I had to fund the next system. Especially when in that era, generations were moving fast. So a console would be out of fashion in 2 or 3 years. So you had to move pretty quick, and it was like, we've just spent 300 quid on that console. You can't be buying another one straight away. So I looked after my shit, and I looked after it so well, because I knew at some point, if I wanted the next hot shit console, I had to sell on what I had. So I remember when I parted with my SNES, all of my boxes were absolutely mint, and they're just cardboard on the SNES boxes. My NES boxes were the same. It grieves me now to think about me parting with it. But, you know, my original box was all in pristine condition. All the polys, all the bags, all the little twisty toys would stay in that box and go in the loft until such time as I need to sell it on again. And it's something I've continued with now, especially as I've gotten into collecting a lot more myself. I realise the importance of making sure anything I buy new now, I absolutely keep pristine. And it pisses me off when I see people who let their collections or let their systems go to absolute shit. And there's a few examples of this. There's a few things I'm going to list here. and they really grieve me, right? Number one, yellowing consoles. There's no excuse for it, right? I don't care where your room is. If you've got a console, you shouldn't be leaving it in broad daylight anyway, because you're going to make things overheat, you know. So you shouldn't be leaving it direct sunlight, right? Then you've got badly kept games, right? The amount of friends I had where the labels will be ripped off their discs, or their tapes would have smashed cases, or their console games would have all gunk and crap in the cartridge, you know, the connectors. Or you'd see people, especially once you go into the CD era, that one used to get me, because people would I'd see people you walk into their bedroom, they'd have the PlayStation on the floor, so on a carpet where it's overheating anyway because there's no ventilation, and they'd go up and they'd say, right, let's play that, and all their discs and their games would be scattered around all over the floor, and they'd take this. I'd have brought my latest game round, and I'd see them take their CD out and just dash it on the carpet, with like a dirty carpet with all bits of crap on. And I could see the state of their discs. They'd be putting their hands all over it, fingering the disc, and just getting smudges and food and scabs and whatever else all over them. And I'd be like, "You're not touching my game. Forget. Step away. Let me handle it." And I remember with some people, I would actually go around their houses, and before we would play, I would actually go and get some tissue at the bathroom with a little bit of soap and water. And I would come in and I would actually have to physically clean their console before I would even touch it, because it was that grimy. People who would spill Coke on it, or tea, or they'd be eating their dinner. The worst one, though, the absolute worst for me, is people who eat whilst they're gaming. When I'm gaming, right, I love to have a drink next to me, right? Generally, I'll drink out of a bottle like this, right, because I can put the lid back on. I haven't got to get it all manky with anything I'm touching. I can keep it away from me, right? When you've got people who've got manky hands, and they put manky hands on the glasses, and it turns that horrible foggy colour, and then they pick up your controller or your joystick. Kids are the absolute worst for it. They'll be there yomming on their chocolate and their crisps, and they'll be there sucking on the fingers, and then they pick up your controller, and I'm like, no, what are you doing? That's disgusting. And I just think about me having to get a cocktail stick in the fucking grooves afterwards and fishing that shit out because my X button's stuck in. Do you know what I mean? And that just really, really gripes on me. And I still know a few people now who aren't the tidiest when it comes to managing their consoles. I mean, I don't know how you keep... Judging by your room there, Jamie, you keep your shit in order.
I do. Even if I buy something now, the box, like you say, the box goes up in the loft, all the bags, all the cable ties, absolutely everything. Because I know... if I get bored of it and sell it on, I can put all the nice pictures on eBay and sell it on. I was exactly the same when I was younger, looking after stuff. Can only afford one thing at a time. So I looked after it, treated it as if I was going to sell it. I mean, my pet hate, you're talking about Christmas, people would eat cheese and onion crisp and then use my controller. Oh, it's like, I don't like cheese and onion crisp as it is, but get your greasy hands off my controller. And some of the stuff I've bought off eBay over the years, I looked carefully at the pictures, but when it's turned up, I don't know what people have done to this stuff or how they've even used it. It's cocktail stick and Dettol the whole thing down before I even think about touching it. And when I bought one of my Commodore 64s, the joysticks that came with it, I just put straight in the bin. I didn't even want to touch them.
No, it's gross. It is freaky. You speak to any PC tech, and one of the things they always tell you, they get PCs brought in all the time, and you know, and that, like, especially from a smoker's home where they bring it in, the fan is full of dust, and that dust is full of nicotine, and it's all sticky, and it's disgusting.
I've worked in PC repair departments where we've had heavily smoking PCs in, and it's like honey in there. It forms.
Yeah,
it's so grim. But
I call it gamer butter. That's what I like to, because it's like something they've just like. You mentioned about eBay. We talked about eBay a lot. Yeah. That is definitely one of the worst parts about buying and selling on eBay, because like you get something come in and you look at it and you're like, oh my god. How did that get like that? How did something become that damaged, that dirty? And like you look, I mean, you can tell a lot by the way someone packages something. I've had some fantastic parcels come through the post where, I mean, they'll have sent me something, I don't know, the size of my phone, and they'll put it in a fucking box that, you know. So it's you shouldn't put breeze blocks in there, and they've cocooned it in bubble wrap, you know. And I love that. It's a bit of overkill, and sometimes you pay over the odds for postage because of it. But I'm always grateful for it. And yet other times I'll have ordered like, I don't know, like a rare game or a rare controller or something, and it'll turn up in a battered box with just like I've seen them packed with old T-shirts and rags and bits of newspaper, and like you'll open the box and it'll stink of fags, or it'll stink of, and that is disgusting, and it really puts you off, and you think, I don't even want to touch this, you know what I mean? I've debated so many times just selling shit straight back on, because I just think I don't want to deal with cleaning. You know,
this is you talk about messy gamers. This is a trouble I had. I think I was lucky enough at one point to have a room where I could put all my consoles out, and I had a big CRT TV. I had 2 racks either side. I think I had 14 consoles out at once, and I just couldn't keep the bloody stuff tidy. That was 14 consoles. That was 14 different controllers I had to try and keep nice and keep all the cables nice, and all those different power supplies, all those ways of putting the cables together to interface into the TV or whatever. And again, I know it's been rejected, but it's all about convenience. It's all about convenience for me these days. But yeah, I hate it. I look after all my stuff, and I always treat it as might have to sell it on one day. But yeah, there's no excuse for people touching my controller with cheese and onion crisp. Definitely.
Nah, it's disgusting. It's like I know that a lot of people's favourite pastime tends to be like they'll sit and have a game, and they'll have a massive super duper bag of crisps or Doritos or something. now Doritos, I'm not a fan of tortilla chips anyway, and the smell of that corn. Yeah. That cheesy corn, it really puts me off.
Aren't they yellow as well? Like
they're like
yeah,
heavily coloured. People mess with those. I mean, I've seen people roll eyes at me before, because like my niece and nephew used to come round and have a game, and quite often like I'd be there, they'd be there, and they'd be like, "Oh, can I have a snack?" Like, and they'd always ask when we're about to start having a game or something, and I'd be like, "Yeah, you can have your snack, but you fucking eat that first. You eat that first, and you don't touch my damn controller till you're finished. And before you do, you're going and you're washing your hands, because I don't want to see that, man. Nobody wants to see that. And it's just really disgusting when people do that, and when people let the kids do it as well. I'm like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Just have some respect for other people's properties. The way I kind of say to them, I'm trying to portray it to them. So, but yeah, it's just shocking, the amount of, it's like a lack of respect that I see for it, and it's horrible now when you're talking about second-hand games and that, like especially CD games. CD games are going to be the first of all the mediums to perish, I think, because people just, they fetch them out, they handle the underside of it. It's like handling vinyl. There's a certain way of doing it. There's a certain way of holding a record that you just, you know, and you should be holding it by the edge, and you shouldn't be putting too much pressure on, and it's, you know, it'd just be pretty bad. And then you see people who like fetch a disc out and their hands all over the laser, and they just grab the disc like they're holding I don't know, a biscuit or something, and they've got crap on their hands anyway, and they'll put it on a side, they'll put it on a table or something, and they always put it. I mean, I've had to do it before when you're doing various things, you know what I mean? But if you've got to fetch a disc out and leave it out of its case, what do? You'll turn it upside down and leave it so it's label side down, wouldn't you? You know what I mean? At least that way, you're not scratching the shit out of the aluminium surface.
I mean, those of us of a certain age, do you remember the Tomorrow's World when they demoed CDs? Did the jam on the CD and then wiped it clean and it worked? It's like, well, yeah, good luck with that these days. I've had discs where the top layers started to peel and sort of disintegrate over time when the reflective layer's gone on certain games and stuff. Again, it all depends how you store them. Those wallet things were a nightmare for it, where they all squeeze together and put pressure on the disc. You try and pull them out and it's pulled some of the surface off.
Well, I mean, sometimes bad cases don't help the situation, because I've had some like DVD cases or DVD wallets where, you know, the little plastic bit in the middle that you have to poke to kind of release them. They're made like shit, and you get those little bits of plastic break off them. And next time you put your disc in, there's a bit of that plastic in there you haven't noticed. And for all you know, it's been underneath your disc the whole time.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've had that happen to me a few times. And then of course you got consoles that destroy discs. I mean, think about the Xbox 360 where it would scratch an entire fucking ring into the disc. That was terrible. That was.
Yeah. Yeah. If it didn't red ring of death. Yeah,
Red
I think
ring,
I went
yeah,
through about 3 of them. Yeah, for that. But yeah, there's no excuse. You got to look after it all. And these things aren't being made anymore. People forget. Yeah, like you say, the old rare games. You think, what a cartridge turns up with a ripped label and it's stained and it's dirty on the contract. What's this person's house like? Well, it's like, what's going on here?
It's almost like you form an opinion in your head because it's like it's like a general way of life they must have, and you can tell by the way something arrives. You think this guy must get up in the morning, scratch his arse, and then pick up his slice of toast. Do you know what I mean? He's that kind of person. And
into the cartridge slot of his console.
Yeah, you know, and it bugs me. I mean, I've got my own bugbears when it comes to people handling cables and stuff. I mean, I'm probably a bit OCD with it, but I like my cables wrapped a certain way that makes them easy to grab with one hand, or easy to easy to kind of chuck into a box and easily identify it when it comes out. And it's more of a practice art than anything, but it does gripe when other people just lob all their stuff in a box, and I think, you've probably got sharp prongs. You're going to break the prongs on your plug. You're going to have a plug scratching up your console or something like that. Yeah. Or I'm going to put my fucking hand in there and something's going to be sharp and I'm going to cut my fucking hand or something like that. A couple of the guys here mentioned a couple of things along this. There's a matter of reading discs. Press discs aren't so bad, but some people can't handle CDs yet. If you're running a copy, especially, a copy so easily gets damaged. You know what I mean? If you got a burned disc, because I burn discs for some of my consoles that haven't got copy protection, and it's great, but you need to keep those discs pristine because 12 months down the line, I've come back to them and some of them don't work anyway. But if you're leaving them out on tables and things like, you think, well, it's low value, I'll burn another one. But then if you can't get hold of the same CDs or something, it might not work, you know. So you've really got to look after them. Sometimes I treat treat those even more fragile than I do the original collectible stuff. Woody said some of the CDs and DVD wallets have rough surfaces and scratch the discs when you take them in and out. Yeah, those ones with the plastic sleeves and there's a little overhang at the top. As you drag that out, it just scratches against it. Yeah.
And they're the ones that can pull the printed surface off your burnt disc.
Oh
as well.
Yeah. I've seen too many of those. I think this is an easy one for people. Everyone here is just saying, it's a fucking nightmare, messy gamers. The controller thing, honestly, I think people should be hung if they're picking up a controller and their hands are covered in fucking food. It's disgusting. It really does make me sick. And I've seen people do it. The worst one at events tends to be chip grease, because obviously you tend to have fast food and stuff available at an event, and people will sit down at a table, and I'm even fine with them doing what I'm doing. By all means, have your beer, stand your pint there. I'm not too bothered about it. Most people tend to focus on where the drinks are. When it comes to the food, though, they'll put down an open tray of big greasy chips, a burger or a hot dog with onions and crap and sauce and fucking mustard and everything dropping everywhere, and they'll be there eating them with their hands while they're having an extended gaming session, and you'll go to it afterwards and you can smell that food on it like 20 paces away. It's like fucking idiot repellent. It's disgusting, and it just makes me absolutely sick every time I see it. So anyway, guys, that's my cue because dinners are going to be ready shortly. So I think I'm going to wrap up in a second. This one's an easy call, I think. We have done this video in 2 parts. It's not too bad. Messy gamers. Nobody likes a messy gamer. Even if you like to eat your food, when you're at home, I'm pretty sure you don't like to dirty up your own stuff. And I'm pretty sure you like to look after your stuff. Most people now know the value of their consoles. They know the value of their games. They definitely look after things a lot better now. It was something that was more common when we were kids, I think, before people realised the value of collecting stuff and preserving stuff. Most people now tend to respect it, but it does still happen at events, and it really irritates me. I do step in if I see people doing it. I say, listen, this stuff's got some value. Would you mind just wiping your hands or something first? You know, move your pints away, move your chips away. You know, I don't like to be that guide. You know what I mean? I want people to enjoy it while them having a bite to eat, especially when there's not many places to sit and eat your food or whatever. But it's just like, you know, come on, respect people's equipment. It just shows a lot of disrespect if you happily go on and like smudge up people's labels and stuff like that. I just find it a bit disrespectful. So I think that's going to be it for that one, guys. Messy Gamers is definitely going in room 101. There's no way we can let that one slide. Even if their sticky fingers are going to make everything all slippy, I'm not letting that topic slide because it's just one that's bothered me since I was a kid, and it has to go.
Yeah.
Right. So so we have committed one thing to room 101 today, guys. I'm sorry we couldn't put yours in, Jamie, but there's too many arguments against that one, so I don't think we could possibly put that in.
As expected, mate.
Yeah, well, you know. Well, you know what? It's a good topic to bring up, and I think it's going to help people, stimulate people's minds into the kind of things to think about. It doesn't necessarily have to be around gaming. It can be about anything that's kind of retro or retro inspired, or about people, or about some kind of fringe activity that kind of goes hand in hand with this hobby. By all means, just if you got an idea for it, drop me a message, see what I think about it, and if I think it's something that's got some chat-worthy content in it, then I'll put it on Retrogaming Room 101. Hopefully not on a Friday from this point onwards, because the amount of chokes we've had this evening are quite bad. What's really annoying is when you watch this back and you watch the actual like the upload of the live stream, all that stuttering will be gone. It doesn't actually capture and stay that way. It only happens when it's actually streaming out live, and that's the most annoying thing about it, because it's the live engagement that I want. So I think I'm going to move these to a Thursday from now on, guys, because at least that way we're not going to get these interruptions. That's the second time now I've had a stream break off. And ironically, it's always YouTube, which is supposed to be the platform designed for video streaming. So they need to sort their lives out, I think. But I just want to thank Jamie for coming on. Really nice to meet you, mate. And I think we've had a great chat there. And I think everyone now can go off and get pissed and enjoy some comfortable, convenient gaming now. If they've got time to do.
Straight up in the loft, mate.
Yeah. But thanks everyone for watching. I'll be back on Tuesday. On Tuesday we've got Barry Morse from the Retro Shed. He'll be coming on and having a chat, and he's got some interesting topics to talk about. And then next Thursday, I think we've got Simon Butler coming on. And Simon Butler's always a man of choice words, and he'll have a lot to say on the subject, so expect a long one next Thursday. But for now, guys, enjoy the rest of your weekend. The weather continues to be like this. Have a drink, stay safe, do what you got to do. But have a good one, and I'll catch you all later.